or something, or you meet a new person and you tell them you fly a helicopter, they must kind of think, well, that's not the typical accountant, pharmacist type thing. So how did you end up there?
Yeah, so I was going down the typical route, to start with. So I went to school, went to university, studied law, and then during, I think it must have been sort of 12, 13 years old, ended up coming across the Army Cadet Force. So joining the cadets in Heston, it was completely, just for something to do, really, just a different activity. Had tried karate, had tried other stuff, didn't really get the vibe that I wanted. Joined cadets, enjoyed it, stuck with it for about 5 years. Absolutely no intention to join the army whatsoever, because mum said no. So it was, you're going to uni, you're going to study law, you're going to become a lawyer. That was a path sort of created for me. And then after a while, cadets started to come to the forefront. We me and my brother, who's in the army as well, doing exactly the same job. We were doing fairly well, enjoying it. Parents were becoming more on side as they learned a bit more as well. That's one of the issues, isn't it? Not knowing enough, which is hopefully what we're doing here. So they learned a little bit more, and we got to sort of know people that were doing the job, and we got to discuss a few things with them. They pushed us to go and just give it a go, do the tests, not actually commit to join. So we did that, got through them, and ended up going to Sandhurst. So that's pretty much how it all started. It started from cadets and then moving forward from there.
What was the cadets like? Because I've never done it.
So cadets, it's essentially just a youth organisation for children aged 12 to 18, and you can join from year 8 onwards. And essentially, it is just a youth organisation that does many activities based around the army. So the curriculum, if you like, is based around military activities. But yeah, you get to see so much. You get to shoot on the ranges. You get to learn first aid and actually get qualifications, meaningful qualifications as well. Go forward, you learn how to sort of teach. So it's really, really in-depth stuff. You get to as you get to the more senior end. Yeah, you do all sorts of stuff. You go away for annual camp for 2 weeks, which is actually the first time we were exposed to helicopters, and then absolutely sort of loved it from there.
Were you scared when you joined Sandhurst? And did you go straight into Sandhurst when you joined?
Yeah, so finished uni, went to Sandhurst, and it was. I think the scariest bit is always the unknown. I had a bit of a heads up. My brother had pretty much just come out of Sandhurst when I was going in. But at the end of the day, you're going with people that you don't know. You're going into an environment that is fairly unknown. And let's be honest, with sort of the minority communities, it's a big unknown. People haven't really done it much before, but there have been a few. And then you're a bit tentative. But as soon as you get there, you realise you will be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. Everyone gets together just like a family, just like the cliche of joining the army. It's a big family. That's exactly what happens. You join your platoon of about 30 men and women, and you become close knit from pretty much day one. And then you take each other through. It's ups and downs through Sandhurst, but you absolutely pull each other through, and you get to the other end.
So do you live there for a year, or how does it work?
So it's set into 3 terms: junior, intermediate, and the senior term. And the junior term is you spend essentially the majority of your time there. The first 5 weeks you cannot leave. So you're doing long hours, long days, and essentially you're breaking into that military routine. So it's taking you from essentially a civilian to a soldier within those first 5 weeks. That's the aim, and it ends with a bit of an exercise at the end. And it's a tiring process, but you feel good having completed it. And then after that 5th week, you get to have your first. They call it a long weekend at home. It's a normal person's weekend. So it's like a Saturday and a Sunday, you get to go home. So that's the first bit of freedom. And then after that, you start getting the odd sort of Saturday off, sometimes the Sunday and the Sunday off as well, as you progress through. And then once you get to senior term, it starts all backing off. So essentially what the aim is through from junior to intermediate to senior, you're sort of becoming an officer by the end. So there's a bit more onus on us. Whereas at the beginning, you're pretty much in the hands of it's called your colour sergeant rank, a sort of senior rank in the army for soldiers, and you've got a captain that's your platoon commander, obviously another rank sort of above, for the company and so on. And you're in their hands from the beginning. And as you start going through, more and more onus is placed on you, because they know that once you come to the end of Sandhurst, you finish senior term, you're potentially going to come out the other end and start commanding soldiers from sort of day one after leaving. So that's how the process works.
It's a big development journey, isn't it? Going from a civilian, like off the street, somebody who's just come out of university, to then going to have to lead a group of people. So I guess they've got to get you in shape for that.
Exactly. That's why it's a year long. You know, a year is a long time to be learning and to be training for a job. But it's a year long for a reason. It's exactly as you described. It's a complex environment. It's not as straightforward as maybe, you know, doing something else. So that complexity needs to be broken down. And then it needs to be taught in sort of various stages and various environments, which is exactly what Sandhurst does. It's a test and train in various environments. It's there to put pressure on you at times and see how you cope with it and learn from it, essentially. So that's sort of the aim.
Did you have to get shouted at, and you're in the films and they scream at you until you cry and that kind of thing? Yeah,
that all, yeah, of course, that all goes on, especially like I said at the beginning. So at the beginning, when you're being broken down, that's when you've got your room inspections where you think your room is absolutely spotless, but they will find something. You know, actually, a funny story that always comes out is you'll be in the room inspection and you know, you can't help but you're sort of terrified that you're going to get picked up for something, and then it eventually happens. But you know that it is sometimes it's just there to just pile on the pressure. It's there. It's a mechanism really to sort of just instill a bit of discipline and sort of. Don't like to use the term sort of break people down, but you know, it's along those lines of piling the pressure on to see where your limits are. That's sort of what they're trying to do. But yeah, you find all sorts, you know, people ironing their bed and all that kind of stuff. And you turn up in your platoon of 30, you get given all your equipment, and essentially it needs to go into your room, and everybody's room has to be exactly the same. So where you've put your yellow socks is where they need to put their yellow socks. You know, that sort of thing that we're talking about. Everyone's t-shirts folded to an A4 width of paper. That's the detail they go down to.
I guess from the films, it's so glamorized, right? Well, not glamorized so much, but you see the action part of it. You see all these war films, and you see the stuff around World War II and and that stuff. You don't really see the day-to-day stuff that people go through. How do you kind of deal with? I'm just trying to think about myself, and if I was in that position, and I think if you went into combat, you'd potentially have to kill somebody, right? So how, do they train you for that in terms of psychologically, in terms of how to deal with that kind of stuff, or you know, I know shell shock and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, of course. In fact, I'll never forget the first day at Sandhurst. The first day at Sandhurst, you're put in the auditorium with everyone that comes in your intake. So I think there's about 250 of us in this auditorium, and the colonel comes in and he addresses everybody, and literally, he, you know, not in any sort of pointing at anyone or anything. He just blanket. Just first thing he said was, if anyone has an issue with taking a life, then please leave now. You know, do not continue, because it's not going to work out well. And I'll never forget that, because that's, you know, you turn up and you think, bloody hell, you know, this guy, he's asking, the first question he's asking is you know, is that. But then towards your end of the senior term, I'm pretty sure it is, that's when they start going through sort of the morality of killing, and they go through all of that aspect to prepare you for what might come. But there's another aspect that people, I think, don't understand. I definitely didn't understand before I joined the army. But it's not as simple as a senior gives you an order and you have to execute that order, just like you see in the movies, and just like people sort of, there's a lot of myths out there that, you know, someone tells you you need to do this and you do it. No, there's such thing as illegal orders. And if there's tests that need to be met, essentially, and if you think that you've been given an illegal order, you are within your rights to not pull the trigger. Absolutely. So that includes, you know, civilians. That includes damaging anything, so collateral damage that you think isn't necessary in that situation. If you're being asked to do something that you think is wrong, you are well within your rights to sort of stick your hand up and say, I don't think that is right. Clearly, that will be put to test, whatever went on. But yeah, you do have a say. You've got a vote.
I think the British Army, from the stuff I've read and seen, and I think they're pretty good in the sense that, you know, if you were in another country, for example, they might get away with doing things that the British Army, like, you know, a soldier wouldn't get away with doing, because there is rules and regulations. And I was watching a movie, it was about some US Marines, and they were doing a mission to get this high value target, and some little boy, some farmer saw them. So they tied him up, but they thought, well, he's obviously gone missing, so someone's going to look for him. And so they either let him go or they kill him. And they couldn't kill him because of the laws, and they felt like they didn't want to do that. So they let him go. He went back, told the Taliban that were there, and they all went. Yeah. All of these guys got killed. I think one of the guys survived because a Taliban villageman, he went into his house, and part of their culture is that they have to protect a visitor or something like that.
Yeah.
So the villagers protected him, and he was the sole survivor. I think that's what the movie's called, actually.
Oh, okay.
But so, yeah, you know, it's not like the Wild West out there, is it?
No, exactly that. So there's obviously always a debate going on as to where that line should be drawn. But at the end of the day, you're professional soldiers, so you have values, you have standards, and you stick to those. You don't just it's not carnage. It's tactical. It's professional. You don't just go sort of lawless. And I mean, it would be absolute chaos if that was the case. You know, people need to be held accountable for their actions at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I read a news report, I think I sent it to you, about somebody took like some ammunition, and a few pieces of ammunition went missing, and that guy went to prison. So it's not
exactly that is, and that's exactly the point. You're accountable for your actions. So just like any other organization, clearly people in our organization get it wrong, just like anywhere else in the world. And as you saw in that article, people are sort of held to account for their actions.
Yeah, and there's 80,000 people in the army, right? So
that's about right.
Within an organization that big, I mean, if you had a family that big, it'd be, you're not going to have everybody who's got the same mindset and the same intentions and all that kind of stuff. You're going to get all sorts within a group that big, right? So did you, as an officer, as a captain, you might not have experienced this that much, but when you see films and you kind of hear the negative sides of the army, you hear about people getting drunk and then smashing up places and beating everyone up. And did you experience any of that, or was that not really?
No, not really. As I said, you get, like you just said, you get all sorts in every organization, don't you? So I'm sure as some people have their own, have fun in their own way and take it too far. I'm sure there's people in sort of every corner of the world that do that. But no, personally, I think that culture has kind of moved on. I think it's labelled as a bit of a military culture, which might not be too far from the truth from like 20, 30, 40 years ago. But I think not just the army, but I think society generally have sort of moved on from that, and things have sort of changed. You don't really get that same rowdiness that you might have got a long time ago.
Okay, so what's the best experience that you've had?
Best experience, I would say, actually, was not too long ago. So it was a couple of weeks ago. We were up at Spade Adam in near Otterburn. It's a sort of a range that's up north, not too far from Newcastle. And we were doing in the Apache helicopter. We were doing laser evasion. So essentially, that's mimicking that an enemy threat has put a laser on our Apache. They're just about to fire a missile, and we have to evade that threat. So that was us. Going from about 500 feet, straight down to 10 feet, above the ground, at sort of 100 knots across the ground. It was, pretty good fun. Good to throw it around.
That's amazing. What's it like sitting in a machine that must be worth millions, right? And you're doing these
Yeah, I can't believe someone's trusting me with it, to be honest. But someone out there is, so it's pretty good. It's nice. It's a good feeling. It's one of those jobs where, when you're doing it, when you're going through training, just like anybody else, that you take it for granted, and then when you sort of take a moment, when you're having one of those flights where you can take a moment, look left and right, and you can see sort of the rocket pods on the side of the helicopter. You think, this is it's pretty cool.
Wow. And I was talking to you earlier about the only time I hear about helicopters is on the news when like someone's crashed in London, or there was the CEO of owner of a football club, Leicester.
Yeah, Leicester City. Yeah.
And then there was the Kobe Bryant death, which more recently, I think about 2 years back. So it makes helicopters seem really dangerous. Is that the case? Yeah. What happened? What's going on?
So I think it's just like anything. You're never gonna. No one on sort of a news channel is going to give you good news most of the time. It's always going to be. I wouldn't say bad news, but it's going to be the news that people want to read about, and people and gets people sort of excited to have a look. So what it is with helicopters, generally fairly safe. No dramatic issues. So I'll take you back to a lot of issues. Can kind of come back to the human rather than the machine. Of course, machines fail as well, but when you put a human into the mix, you've got other factors as well that can influence the decision making and all that sort of stuff. So, what the army does, or what the military does to combat that, is we obviously have a training pipeline, a training program, taken us right from the beginning, and that training isn't just about flying the helicopter. Of course, that is naturally part of it. We've got simulators that we train on as well, so we train for all of those emergencies. For example, that Leicester City was a tail rotor issue, so we try and train for those issues. Some of those issues clearly are unavoidable. There's accidents that happen, really tragic, and in some cases unavoidable, but there are loads of accidents that have happened that have been avoidable, and most of them have been down to the person. So we have something called human factors training, which is essentially we look back at a number of crashes that have happened. You look back at the events leading up to there, and you see that sometimes it could be a multitude of factors that have all come together in one incident, and unfortunately a tragic end. For example, someone not having the correct rest period, someone not having missed a check, that they should have done, that sort of thing. So we have all sorts of training and currencies as well. So human factors isn't something that we just get at the beginning of the course and we forget about. It's a currency that we have to keep up with and keep training on.
That's really interesting. I was reading a book by a surgeon, and he's got an Indian name which is really long, so I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but the book called The Checklist Manifesto, and he implemented what pilots use in the NHS, and he reduced like hospital acquired infections. He reduced like mishaps, like cutting off the wrong leg, that kind of stuff, drastically. I think it was like 75% improvements in mishaps in a hospital environment. And he was saying the most stringent measures are taken by pilots, because when something goes wrong, they will dissect, okay, what went wrong, and then a message will go out to all other pilots that this needs to be changed. So he was trying to implement that in lots of different professions where mistakes happen. That's the mentality. So with the Leicester City one, I don't know what that tail rotor you mentioned. Is that the pilot didn't check that potentially, or
no? I'd need to check the specifics, but essentially that. Without going into the sort of physics of it all, if you have the rotor spin, and so if you didn't have anything on the tail, the body of the helicopter would spin in the opposite direction of the rotors. So to stop that, you have a tail rotor that gives it thrust in the opposite direction, and that's what keeps the helicopter not from spinning from the body. So if anything happens to the tail rotor, damage or otherwise, and you lose that, that's when the body starts spinning uncontrollably in most cases. And without having any speed going forwards, you're only really going to go one way, and you're going to lose sort of all of your senses. Really, you're not going to be able to know where you're going. You won't even know which way is up at that point.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
And the Kobe Bryant one, I read somewhere that it was down to visibility. Like someone was telling them not to fly, and I think it was around the time when they had the fires in California or something. And there's a lot of smog.
Yeah. So again, hopefully I've got this correct. Apologies if I have got this wrong as well. But that was down to, you're right, it was down to, I think, a low cloud base or fog, I think it was. And essentially, when I think they dug into it, it was lack of currency for the pilot. Hadn't done, it's called instrument flying. Apparently he wasn't very current on it at all. And so it didn't go, it didn't really work out.
Yeah, they hit a mountain, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
That was really tragic. I was actually in when all of that was happening, and so he had such an impact on people and such a tragic loss.
100%.
What's your experiences as somebody who's brown, somebody who's a Sikh? Like, what I know, there's a Sikh network. I know you guys are making moves. I know there's a Kirtani group. I know there's lots of stuff happening within the British Army for Sikhs. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I'll take it in two aspects. So we'll talk about the Defence Sikh Network in a second. So essentially joining as a Sikh. So turn up to Sandhurst, and you think, of course you look like a bit of an odd one out, because there weren't many sort of people from our background that were at Sandhurst. But you do essentially you jump in, you get into the deep end straight away, and from my experience, it is all down to what you are like as an individual. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It's all about it's all about what you do and how you act. And if you are a good person, you're willing to get in, you put in the effort, you will be absolutely fine, and people will look after you. And when you need help, they'll be there. When they need help, make sure you're there, and everything goes absolutely well. People that tend to struggle are the people that are sort of personality driven more than anything, and they might have a personality that sort of clashes, or just a bit different, and they sort of struggle a bit more. So I can't really say that I've had any issues because of who I am or what I look like or anything like that. Now, with the Defence Sikh Network, there are all sorts of networks across the British Army, religious and otherwise, and essentially just designed as for a number of reasons. But one of the primary reasons are to understand. And what I mean by that is the Defence Sikh Network are sort of the subject matter experts now on all things Sikhi. So, for example, wearing a bug, wearing a turban, how should start. For example, there's always debate around styles, etc., and they will be the voice as to, right, how do we overcome this issue? Beards, how do we overcome issues with respirators, that sort of thing. They're there to help the chain of command, the wider chain of command, understand Sikhs. And like I said, it's obviously not just the Defence Sikh Network. There's loads of other networks to do similar things with people from different backgrounds, and it's also there to bring us together. So it's nice to then get together with other Sikhs from different parts of the army, and we are in all parts of the army. We're not just all from sort of one or two parts. We have all sorts of regiments and jobs and cap badges, and it is nice to catch up. And occasionally, it's nice for our families to catch up as well. It's nice for my wife to speak to somebody else's wife, and because they've got obviously similar things to discuss and concerns, and just building a network really.
That's really interesting. What's the? I know there's a rich history of Sikhs in the army. Can you talk on that? I know. Yeah. I watched the Sarigari film, but it was the Bollywood one I watched.
Yeah.
So I should have watched the other one, but I think it's still something.
Yeah. So I wish. So I'm always trying to learn more about history. Sarigari is a good one because that one we focus on quite a lot. Without going into the history, what I will say is give it a read. Give it a research, but I'll give you the bare basics of it. And I'll say that, in my opinion, what the reality was actually better than the movie. You'd normally say the movie big things up, and no, the reality of what happened is actually better than what the movie shows. So essentially, documented, there's 21 Sikhs holding a fort called Sarigari against what was 10,000 and now Afghans, obviously different back then, but so they're essentially 10,000 tribesmen turning up, and 21 Sikhs holding a fort. Now I appreciate none of us, being in the military, even I can't fathom what that must have been like. let alone for anybody else. But take it from me that holding a fort with 21 of you to 10,000 is ridiculous for even 15 minutes, let alone several hours. They all passed, they all died in the end. But to hold a fort for that many hours, incredible. Honestly, it is incredible, and it is worth looking into that history. It just makes you think, what they would have gone through was absolutely horrendous.
Just trying to visualize it, just the sheer numbers of facing 10,000 people, and like it is just it's like 1,000 to 1 pretty much.
Exactly.
It's.
I mean,
if we scared just seeing the sight of it.
Yeah. If we were to go and do an attack, we would try and get 3 to 1, and they were, how outnumbered were they? Absolutely, immense.
You don't have any hope, right? Death is the that's the only outcome.
They knew that, yeah, they knew that.
But they didn't try and run.
No, carried on.
What's the worst experience you've had in the army?
So worst experience is quite difficult, and I genuinely mean this. I've not really had a bad time. I'll be honest with you. There's ups and downs in every job, every profession. I suppose the only real down has just been we had sort of a bit of a delay to training. And because I wanted to get to the front, I wanted to get my training complete ASAP. That was a time where, had a short delay and it got me down a little bit. And I was thinking, wish things moved forward. Had about six month gap at one point, and then another 6 month gap after that. But I turned those 6 month gaps into quite good jobs in the end. I managed to do something else in the army. So I went to Aldershot, which wasn't far from home for me. Living sort of just down the road, and I was doing some different stuff there, a bit more of an office environment, and going out and speaking to people about what the British Army does, going to schools, going to events. So actually, it turned out to be all right in the end. But during that delay in training was probably quite bad. Other things where people were probably expecting me to say, oh yeah, we would, we're doing an exercise, and we were tired and
for a week.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? That kind of stuff, it depends on what you like. But now I miss that kind of stuff, because the job I'm doing now, we don't really do that kind of thing anymore. So it's all good.
I know you're married. How do you manage? Because most people's idea of the army is you probably live on a barrack, and you're away from your family, or you hardly see them. And how does that work?
So different units, different regiments, of which there are many in the army, do different jobs, and that sort of will dictate where in the country you are, potentially. Some jobs are all over the country. My particular job, the helicopter that I'm flying, the Apache, is all sort of on the East Coast or down in Hampshire. So not on the East Coast, but to the east near Ipswich, not too far from there, and then down in Hampshire. Those are sort of the two bases where they're operating. So I know that those are the two places I could be. So I'm about 2 hours away from home at the moment. If I move on to daily routine, which is normally a question that we get, my daily routine is it can be a bit different. I'll explain that in a second. But essentially, I go to work, I do my job, and then I'm free to do what I like. Whether I go home, whether I don't, I could even get a home. We call it on the patch, which is pretty much on camp. Or just off camp, so I could move my family up there if I wanted to. I prefer not to, because my wife's got a job down here, so it's easier if she stays here and I go to work. And essentially, I manage it like that. So sometimes, if I'm going to work and I'm working in the middle of the day, I'll go there, leave in the morning, come back in the evening. It just like a normal person. And then other days, for example, this week a bit busier, flying at night as well, which means I've got a room up there. So I'll stay there for maybe a day, 2 days, and then come back. And we just manage it in between ourselves. And if I need a day off to do something, again, just like any other job, not really a big issue, unless something critical is going on. Go to the chain of command, go to the line manager, and just say, right, I've got this on. Can I have this day off? So it's fairly like a normal job. It gets different where we have to fly at night quite a lot to keep current. So we do night flying, which can be a bit different. And we do going away in a few months for about 7 weeks. So obviously that is the differences, but day to day, it's not really a hassle at all.
Wow. So it sounds like there's a lot of different jobs in the army, right? If you wanted to become a pilot, can you just go straight from university, or do you have to have certain degrees, certain A levels to become a pilot? I know you do in the commercial world, but how does it work in with what you do?
So I'm not familiar with the commercial world at all, but for the military world, there is no set educational requirements for becoming a pilot, for example. Yeah, I study law. So you don't even need a degree if you want. So going back a step, you can either join the army as a soldier or as an officer. You've got two routes into the army, and the distinction between them is really the soldiers joining. They are essentially the subject matter experts. They're the guys that are doing the job day to day, and again, in any regiment, various number of jobs. So that's what they're doing, and the officers are essentially line managers. They're there to lead, organize, that sort of thing. So that's the two distinctions. To join as an officer, the educational requirements are A levels or A level equivalent, and there's a certain number of UCAS points you need to get. I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they are all on the website. So it's all on sort of army jobs. And so if you want to become a pilot, you can do anything as long as you get that entry requirement, do the Army Officer Selection Board, and then from there go to Sandhurst. And there's additional testing that needs to be done to become a pilot, aptitude testing, medical, and something called grading, where I did it as a civilian, where they literally taught me how to fly 11 or 13 hours, I can't remember which, in a plane in Hampshire, and they just see how fast you can learn. They see, check your progression, and if you meet the standard, you passed, and you go forward. If you haven't met the standard, you can obviously still join the army, but you'll have to find a different role, a different job.
So there's a lot to this, because you're an officer and a kind of tradesperson, right? In the sense that you're a skilled person, because you're actually still flying. You're not managing people, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of doing both. And that's really interesting. With a couple of things relevant to the kind of Amritari community, they probably want to know, like, can Sikhs have Gurbans? Can Sikhs where do activities with a keski, with a turban? Can they be vegetarian, vegan?
Yeah. So we get similar questions all the time. So and the answer to most of those, to all of those questions is yes. The Defence Sikh Network are really good. So if there's something in particular that somebody wants to ask, drop them a message on social media. Our social media guy, he's really good. A young lieutenant. He's from sort of West London as well, and a local guy. He's really good. He'll answer all of your questions. But yeah, absolutely. Essentially, you can do everything that needs to be done within the army, and there's provisions made for Sikhs completely. And one of the most important ones, clearly, is from aside from what we just discussed, is food. Vegetarian, and even down to ration packs. So if you're on camp, you're in the cookhouse. Clearly, there will be vegetarian options, and if you're out on exercise, there's Sikh ration packs as well, vegetarian ration packs. So there's no issues whatsoever. We also have, this is something that most people take on themselves. So we've got people all over the army, and most of them will deliver presentations to their own battalions. So our sort of Sikh guys will stand up in front of 1,000 people in front of their battalion and tell them what Sikh is, why they're wearing a bug, what a Qurban is, just to educate people in the regiments, because some people they've never come across a Sikh, they've never heard of a Sikh, or if they have, they might not know exactly what we're about. So it's always good to educate, and we try and promote that as much as we can within the army, so that other people can be fairly understanding. And the chain of command from different units will regularly interact with our Defence Sikh Network to ask a question and say, I've got this private just joined. Where can I get a bug from? Because does he have to buy it himself? Do the army provide it? All of these questions that people within the military might not have the answers to, so they come to the network to get these answers.
That's really cool. I think one of the most famous soldiers is David Goggins, right? Like he's very popular on social media, on YouTube. His books are very popular, and people think he's a bit crazy in terms of his training. So with the army, and kind of stereotypically, people know they run a lot with heavy bags on their back and that kind of stuff. Is there a lot of training? Is there a lot of physical exercise? I know a lot of people in the Sikh community enjoy that kind of stuff, and I think there's boxing, there's other things that you can do, right, on top of PT. So how does that work?
So when you're going through training, there's a lot of physical activity. There's a lot of physical training when you're going through basic training. So whether that be Sandhurst, or if you join as a soldier, you're 14 weeks, you'll be fairly fit after that. And then from there, it depends which unit you go to. If you go and join an infantry unit, you know your maintaining fit is very important for everyone in the army. If you go and join an infantry unit, you'll be doing a lot more physical exercise than you will if you join another unit, for example. Everyone will have to have that baseline fitness, but some jobs require a high level of fitness than others. So it absolutely depends on you. But as an individual, the onus is on you to keep fit. The onus is on you to maintain yourself. Clearly, your day-to-day routine will help. But in some calendars, the day-to-day stuff is so busy that physical training time will have to fit in and around. So the onus is on you to make some time, make some white space to make that happen.
Yeah, so I think with David Goggins, reading his book, he was never deployed. His role was more to do with going out to schools, and he was doing ultramarathons. So he was kind of the spokesperson for I think he was a ranger or marine or something. Like he did a few things. So I think he was mainly a spokesperson. So the training kind of fit because he was competing in these crazy 100-mile races, and then he was going to schools in between. So I think that kind of was his background. And have you heard of Daniel Debeau, this heavyweight?
Which one, sorry?
Daniel Debeau.
I've heard the name, but I've not read any books or anything like that. If you have,
he's apparently in the military as well. So I know they kind of support some athletes. So if there's some soldiers who are in sports, they'll back them up.
Yeah, exactly that. So every regiment will conduct their own sports, and it goes up in levels. So you have regimental sports. From there, you'll have regimental teams as well, and then it gets bigger and bigger. So you go up to against sort of every other regiment locally, every other regiment within the army, and then you have divisions. You also then can go against the Navy, etc., and all the way up to we've had people go to the Olympics. You know, that's how much development there is out there. Dame Kelly Holmes, she was in the army as well, so she started life in the military. So yeah, that people, if you show signs of sort of excellence, you'll get nurtured and you'll get pushed up to the highest levels. We've got people that are boxers, footballers, you name it. You can pretty much do anything, whether that be for fun, absolutely fine, or if you want to compete at higher levels and get there, there'll be someone there to guide you, or there'll be a regimental team that you can join and work your way up.
Have you heard of CrossFit?
Yeah, CrossFit.
So there's one of the top CrossFit guys. I think his name's Chandler Smith. He's in the army. So the US do a lot of that as well. They've got a big wrestling team, and a lot of their guys will go to kind of international competitions and stuff. And then they've got one of the main CrossFit guys is actually full time in the army. So he's got his own army kind of team that he's trying to train up, and then he'll compete at the CrossFit Games. And so we have
every sort of team. We had a kabaddi team years ago. This was, I think, before I joined the army. They had a kabaddi team that went to India and did a tour out there. So that just shows you the sort of the breadth and depth of stuff that you can get involved in.
That's amazing. One piece of advice for a 12-year-old coming up, growing up, trying to find themselves, somebody from South Asian community.
Yeah, so I would say try different things. I mentioned at the beginning, but I joined cadets, and that's how I got into what I'm doing now. But that wasn't the only thing I tried. Tried going to karate, did a couple of lessons, wasn't my thing. Tried other stuff, found what I wanted to do. Try different things, see what you enjoy, and try and use it if you can. If for nothing else, do that as well as doing other stuff. So what I mean by that is, even when it comes to UCAS applications, when it comes to applying for a job, you want to stand out of the crowd. And I think if you can talk about doing something a bit different, it will definitely stand you in good stead. For my university UCAS interviews to go and study law, I didn't get asked a single question about anything. All they saw was, all right, you do this, with either the reserves or the Army Cadet Force. You did this. Tell me about that. And they were just so interested in the other stuff, in me as a person. The educational stuff, they didn't really want to discuss, because they want to see people that are different individuals that can not just do the education but have something else about them. So get involved, get stuck in, and just find out a bit more about as much as you can. Finding out about the military doesn't mean you have to join the military. If nothing else, it gives you a bit more information, and that's just one aspect. So yeah, get involved in as many things as you can before you find what you're good at or what you enjoy.
That's really good advice. My cousin sister, who she'll probably watch this, when I was young, she was like, whatever opportunities you get, take them, because you can add them to your record of achievement, and it will help you when you try and apply for university and jobs and later in life. And it was brilliant. The kinds of that was brilliant advice. And also, I had a rugby player on an earlier episode. I think it was episode 4, and he was talking about how when he was a kid growing up, his parents just got him into lots of different types of sports, and he gravitated towards football and rugby, and then he represents his nation, right? So he's done incredibly well. But we're in a fortunate position where we can give our kids, like your parents did that for you.
Yeah.
We can give them a bit of a taste of different things and see what they gravitate towards, what they have natural predisposition towards or talent towards. So.
Exactly. And just wanted to mention as well that genuinely came from very humble beginnings. Born and raised in Hayes, West London, absolutely normal, typical family, parents from Punjab, and managed to now do what I'm doing. And average student at school, nothing crazy, and just right place, right time, right advice from different people. It's all about growing your network. Even from when you're young, networking sounds like a really I don't know, some cool thing people do. No, it's just talking to people. That's all it is. Make connections, discuss stuff with different people, get to know people that do different things, and you'll learn something. It's that simple.
Okay, so one last question, if it's okay.
Go for it.
What do you want to do kind of going forward? This is probably it sounds like an interview, but because you're a Apache helicopter pilot. So how do you where do you go from there?
Yeah, so I'm like I said, I've still got 2 months of training or a couple of months of training left to go before I finish. So that's my next step, and then beyond that, at the moment I'm just a helicopter pilot. Next stage for me will be, for example, commanding a number of helicopters, or in fact before that, becoming an aircraft commander myself, so I can command one aircraft, and then hopefully commanding a squadron. And then that sort of stuff. There's always stuff to do. Or I can become a helicopter instructor, so I can teach other people to fly helicopters, which seems quite rewarding as well. Multitude of different avenues. Or after a couple of years, if I don't want to fly anymore, I can leave that and go and do something else. So it's fairly open game at the moment. But I'm enjoying what I do for right now. So no plans to do anything else.
What's the best way to connect with you or the Defence Sikh Network? Where can people get in touch?
So Defence Sikh Network, social media, go onto Instagram, type it in, you'll find them. Facebook as well, probably on Twitter. I'm not personally on Twitter, so I'm not too sure, but you can get through to them. Me personally, comments box for this, I'm sure, no issues. Any way you can. If you want to drop me an email or anything like that, I'm sure I can put that in the comments box. I'm fairly open, happy to engage with anyone that wants to have a conversation or ask a question. Anything at all. I'm more than happy to help if I can.
Yeah, so I will, if you have question or comment, leave it in the comment box below, and then I'll get in touch with Harmeet. Thank you so much for your time, Harmeet. It's really appreciated.
Thanks for having me.